and how the ADA is impacting specifically web content, there's two parts to it: Title II and Title III. Now, Title I of ADA has to do with hiring and employment, and there are exceptions in Title I for the size of your business. So if your business is under a certain size, you're exempt from certain things. When we get into Title II and Title III, which Title II is private entities, Title III is public entities, there in it, and those are specifically talking about access to services. There are no limitations. There are no cutouts. There's no minimums. Every business is required by law, every business, government agency, nonprofit, unless you are a religious organization or a private club. So if you're a private hunting club, for example, you are exempt. Outside of that, everybody else must comply with ADA. Last year in 2024, the Department of Justice came out with some new guidelines for states and local governments and specifically about private services, transportation services, housing services. It doesn't matter. Employment services, any service rendered to the public, garbage collection, utilities, all of these things. They came out with a ruling that says you now must be in compliance by either April 2026 or April 2027, depending on the size of population you serve. And instead of waiting for a lawsuit to enforce this, the Department of Justice, the federal government, will begin regulating and enforcing this. And then they let people know that they're working on the same thing for Title III. And so what this covers is access to your services. So if you have a website, if you have an app, if you send emails to your clients or customers, if you include a PDF of any type, a guide or anything like that, your social media content, if you get any money from the government whatsoever, a grant money, if you have a contract with the state to provide services, public services, I'm happy to say it. So we've got a customer, they are a garbage collector and they have a contract with the town to collect garbage in town for residents. They are under Title II because they're providing a public service. They have until next April to fully comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act on all web content. So that has really started this new emphasis of everything. And now we also know that the department, and a lot of people kind of expected that the new administration might get rid of some of this because some people see this as unfunded mandates. And while it is under DEI, because of it's definitely under the inclusivity of side of it. The Department of Justice has carved this out not to get rid of it, because it is accessibility, and we shouldn't come at this from a fear mindset or a regulation or like, oh, this is such a burden. 20 to 25% of people have some type of disability, permanent or temporary, that's preventing them from having equal access to web content. And so it really is a social justice. It's a right thing to do, and there's ways to do it that it doesn't have to be expensive, and that's what we've decided to do as an agency. As we've decided to kind of be a crusader of this and help people access this and get this stuff done for them in a way that's it's not about fear. We don't have to do it overnight. We can create a plan, and so we're just trying to help educate people now. So that's kind of what has brought all of this together.
So that's helpful. I don't know that I realized that there were these the tiers and kind of the different title things. And of course, the minute I unmute, here he goes. Okay. So a lot of people think of ramps and elevators when I think about ADA and ADA compliance. So can you talk? I know you touched on that a little bit just a minute ago, kind of the inclusivity of it. So how does ADA apply to websites and digital experiences? Can you go into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So, what we want to look at the core of all of this is what's known as universal design. And so, the kind of a classic example is we've all seen curb cutouts at a sidewalk. Well, curb cutouts came from a place of providing equal access to people in wheelchairs to be out in equal access to the sidewalk so they can maneuver. But these curb cutouts have benefited everybody. A parent pushing a stroller, or the delivery driver with a hand cart, pulling, with a delivery and stuff. So what we're looking at is access to services. And so everything you put online has to be accessible to people with disabilities reasonably because it's impossible. And even the law said you can't make your web content, you can't make your place a business. There is no way to make it 100% accessible for every single disability out there. um, so what we want to do is our best efforts for reasonable accessibility. And so when somebody comes to your website, we want to make sure that they can access the content, they can contact you, and if they engage with your social media, if you send them emails, like I said, a PDF. Most people don't think of all those things. They think, I got to get my website, but once they get the website done, if somebody actually downloads something from it, or let's say they schedule an appointment with you, but then the email that sends them the information isn't accessible to them, well, you really haven't created equal access to your services. So you got to think through the entire customer journey. And a lot of people, one of the pushbacks that we get sometimes, for example, somebody that maybe runs a driving school, okay, they would say, well, none of my customers are going to be blind. Why does this have to apply to me? Well, I understand that, but I'm legally blind, and we're in the process of, we've got a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old. And so we're researching, and guess who's one of the people doing some of the research and trying to find things like that? Me. And so while my children aren't visually impaired, I am. And so uh, equal access, just because your specific service may not be, you may think, well, like, somebody with a disability isn't going to access my stuff. There are a lot of hidden disabilities that accessibility extends to. It's not just vision, it's hearing, it's cognitive things. And the list just goes on and on and on, physical mobilities, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit more. But yeah, you've got to make sure that all of your content, from your social media to your website to everything, is accessible.
So I think that's one thing that it comes up when I'm talking to clients a lot. Typically, it starts with the website conversation, and that's typically the catalyst. But one thing that I think is, if we think about sending emails and newsletters, lead gens, as a marketing strategist, I want everybody to have their email list. I want everybody to have, typically people start with that downloadable PDF. And one of the kind of, what would I call it? A hill that I've been willing to die on lately, is talking about in the regular emails that they're sending to clients, or to their email list. I think Canva is a fantastic tool, and I think that people use it almost sometimes too much, to the point where they're designing a newsletter in Canva, and then they're either attaching it as a PDF, or they're embedding it, or whatever the format is. And so they're spending a lot of time on this design. And I live out in the country. You, as someone who lives in different capacities, also, deal with spotty internet and often out in this rural area. That's what I talk about. I'm like, if you have this graphic filled email, the people who are on country internet, if all you're doing is typing what you want to say in a graphic and embedding it in your email, or plugging it in, a lot of people aren't seeing that. And they're only going to hang out. You probably, Eric, know better these statistics than I do. They're going to hang out for what, 2.5 seconds, 1.75 seconds before they bounce.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I've been introducing some of these concepts beyond just emails, not only as a, this is the law and it's within ADA compliance. But if you think about saving some time and not building in Canva and just getting to your email system and just typing out an email, not only are you more compliant, you're saving more time. And from a marketing strategy perspective, it feels more personal. So when you plug in a newsletter, like a "Hey y'all" newsletter, here's what's going on, people feel that blasted, like there are a lot of other people receiving this. And when you have a more one-on-one, just a black and white text email, occasionally maybe with a photo or graphic, people feel a lot more connected and drawn into the content. So I love that we can talk about all of that together.
That comes back to this idea of universal design. Curb cutouts benefit so many people. Not just the people in it. And there's lots of things when it comes to universal design, in the physical space, but it also happens on the digital space. One of the things that we do, is we, ask people to also think about the fact, like, do you want somebody that's on a bus on public transportation to be able to easily access your email or your website? And everybody's like, well, yeah, probably, sure. Well, how about somebody that is at, their kids or grandkids baseball game, and, the kid's sitting in the dugout, there's nothing really to watch. And so there's like, this is the time for, they're going to pull their phone out, they're in the bright sunlight and stuff like that. Do you want them to access? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, then you got to have good contrast ratio. That's an accessibility thing that actually makes it so much better for the person on their phone out in the bright sunlight. What you talked about, there are times like we have a lot of our browsers set to not download images because we have slow internet, we have limited internet. We change our SIM card. We change our SIM card on our phone, every month pretty much as we move. And so we're very limited on data. And, I only have a gig or 2 gigs, depending on where I'm at in the world, for a month. And so I don't want to use all that up by downloading unnecessary images. But like you said, sometimes I have to, because it's that a business or brand has made the decision that the only way I can access their stuff is by I have to download this big giant file. So yeah.
Okay. So if someone wants to do a quick check of their website, without any fancy tools or anything, what are a few things that like we can hang up today and go do to check on this?
Yeah, a couple of super simple things. One, go to your website, scroll to the very bottom, and in your footer, in the bottom part of your website, look and see if you have a link to an accessibility statement. Every website should have a website accessibility statement, and it should be accessible. And so, even so that's thing one. The next thing you should do is when you reload your website, and then try to use your website without touching your mouse or a trackpad. Only use the keyboard. You should be able to press the tab button on your keyboard, and the very first thing that should happen is a button should come up that says skip to content. If that happens, great. If that doesn't happen, your website is already missing a crucial mark. Hit the tab button again. You should see a box start to, every time you press tab, a box should move along every item of your website that's clickable, and it should completely move through the navigation menu. And if it doesn't, well, you've just eliminated a whole vast array of people that can use your website. People that use screen readers, and this isn't just blind. There are people that use screen readers because they have severe dyslexia. And so they can't, reading it is a challenge. They may have a neurological condition that doesn't translate written language, and so they literally can't read. There's one, now, not a lot of people have it, but there's even a disability where certain people, if they see a certain letter, that letter triggers a smell. So every time they see the letter C, they have an overwhelming sense of the smell of garlic. And so who wants to do that all day long? And so, they use screen readers to limit that trigger happening. So you have to broaden your understanding of it's not just people who are blind. And so one quick way to check is that keyboard navigation. Like that's fundamental. It's just that's the one of the bare bone things you can do. The other thing you can do is on your phone, on the iPhone and Android, there's an accessibility setting in the settings menu. And so you can go to it, and on the iPhone it's called VoiceOver, and on Android it's like Talk to Me or something like that. I forget off the top of my head. But it turns your phone into you use your finger, and as you move your finger around on the phone, it tells you what's under your finger. It describes it to you. And so go to your web, turn that on, practice for a minute, understanding it, how to use it, and how to get out of it, triple clicks and stuff like that, because I don't want you to get, it'll give you a tutorial. It'll give you a tutorial. So just make sure you do that. But then go to your website and close your eyes and try to use your website. And you'll see very quickly how accessible your website is or isn't to somebody using something like that. So those are 3 just real quick, easy things for people to check that I would recommend anybody and everybody doing. And then look, if you have any videos on your website, do they have captions, or do you provide a transcript? Because if not, that content isn't available to people that are deaf. So yeah, so there's a couple right there.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about benefits.
Mm.
So what kind of upside is there for businesses and organizations that prioritize accessibility?
Faster websites, increased search engine optimization, because one of the things that you're going to do is you ensure that the website is structured very well with proper what's called H1 and H2 and H3. We don't have to get into that right now, but you ensure that everything is structured properly, and you're going to add alt text to every single image. And so every single and search engines love reading that. You're going to you're going to when you look at your site and set it up for people that are with accessibility in mind, and when you understand how screen readers and things like that work, you'll start to change links on your website, because instead of just saying click here or next or learn more, because when somebody's using a screen reader, the screen reader is, depending on which version they use, is just reading the page to them first as a hierarchy. And so all they're hearing is link, click here, link, learn more, link, click here. And they're like, for what? You have to make the whole link say, click here to learn more about our knife sharpening specials this month. Click here to learn more about, click here to send us a message. Your links become more descriptive, so that when somebody's getting a screen reader, they're hearing that, but then Google also sees that and reads those, and it gets a much better understanding of the structure of your site and what you're trying to lead people to do. And so you're going to have better SEO, and then people without disabilities, they're going to see that, and it's going to stick out to them. Every single time we go through and do just base remediation on a website, just very basic, simple accessibility remediation, we always see a conversion increase. Every single 100% of the time, more people convert when they're on the website, because it's Accessibility is universal. It does great things. So your SEO, you're gonna have more conversions. You're gonna have a faster website, which is good. And then the other big benefit is people in disabilities are in tight knit communities. And so they're in communities with people that have that disability. And if your brand, there are listicles of businesses that are friendly to do business if you're visually impaired. If you have, if you have autism or children with autism, if you're deaf, this is a business that can make that will has made everything accessible for you. Like, do you, if when somebody's scheduling a meeting with you, do you offer the opportunity to provide um, a sign language interpreter or to use a service that includes auto captioning? We've all you got used to seeing the TTY phone numbers and stuff like that, but when we went online, we kind of got away from that. And so, if you do that on your site, people in the deaf community are going to start saying, "Oh, they're going to let other people know. They're going to start communicating. This is a business to go do business with because they're friendly. They're business friendly for us." So there's significant number of benefits that businesses have when they do remediation of their website and social media content and emails and PDFs, all of their web content.
Now, I might get myself in trouble here asking this question, but I know at one point there were tax benefits for updating your website to be ADA compliant. Do those still exist, or was that like an early adopter incentive?
No, there's a tax benefit that you can get every single year
Oh,
for any accessibility improvement. So if you do any accessibility remediation to your physical building, your digital assets, anything, it's I'm not going to get the specifics right, but it's 50% up to $10,500, and it's a tax credit. So you can get a tax credit of up to $5,250 per year for doing any type of accessibility remediation. And I can send you a link, and you can follow up with it. There's a really simple form you download, and then when you work with somebody that's doing remediation, just ask them, just say, "Hey, I need the invoice to very clearly state that this went to that." And so we do that if we do remediation services for people. The invoice says, "Hey, this much of the project went to, remediation." And some people will do like some people just want to do it once and be done with it. But others are like, let's tackle this like a bit at a time. And so we'll create a 6, 12, 18, 24 for a really large business, 36-month. We'll create a plan that's like, okay, month one, we're going to do these two things. Month two, we're going to do these three things. And we're going to do these two, these four, these one, depending on the size of them. And we just, each month, we do a little bit, a little bit. And that's the key. You just got to start where you are. You don't have to have this done tomorrow. If you're making progress, you're going to, and 2 years from now, you're going to have a business that's just more accessible. For example, this may even you'll start to see things different and think about things different. And I've even had people who like, we realized that even in our employee break room, our microwave was too high. And if we ever had somebody that applied that was in a wheelchair, we weren't set up for that person to be hired by us. So they started like we lowered the microwave shelf. And so there's all kinds of things that this starts to do that makes you a more accessible business and brand. So yeah, but there is the tax benefit. That's really a nice one.
okay. I'm glad I asked. I thought it was a one-time thing. So I like Who all have I told that to in the last couple of years? I need to go back and make sure they're still claiming.
Yep, it's you can claim it once a year,
Amazing.
but no, you can claim it now. In my understanding, I'm not a tax expert. My tax expert has verified this as well as all of our stuff, all of the training that we go through for accessibility. But yeah, so but I'm not giving tax advice or legal advice in here. So there's my disclaimer. Um, but uh, but yeah, it's from everything I know about it, you can use it every single year.
Okay. So I've certainly got a couple of things noodling around for me. Can you this can feel overwhelming, right? Like you just talked about this could be a third and obviously I don't I don't think anybody on this call is like a 36-month plan kind of a, situation. But thinking about social media, PDFs, website, all of the things, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, even though you're breaking this down for us. So as we really think about taking this seriously, what is the smartest first step? Like, what do I do first, Eric? And then I can be like chipping things away one at a time.
Sure. I would say the very first thing is talking with your team and taking some time to wrestle a little bit yourself with the mindset on accessibility. And I never want people to approach this from a fear thing or it's another regular, I've got to do this because um people with disabilities like no they got to live got to live every day with a challenge, and so they're the ones that have the I got to deal with it. They have no choice. And so making accommodations for people, like it's a pretty simple social justice issue as far as I'm concerned. Like it's just doing good, and being a good brand and being a good neighbor to your community. And like it's just a good thing to do. And so talking to your team and you might find that people already know or about things or they're more aware. Or, hey, I've got a cousin that, actually is blind. They would, I could ask them if they would check our website out and give us feedback, or our business or, whatever it might be. And when you start to talk to people, you're also going to start to discover like there are organizations around you that specifically help with this kind of stuff. There's grant money available. There's all kinds of resources out there because accessibility is a good thing. 25% of the population has accessibility or has some level of disability. Now it can be temporary, it can be permanent. But let's say there's a single mom who has a splitting migraine, and so she's got to have the lights really dim because any extra light really really hurts. But she also has two kids, and so she can't just stop her life. And one of her kids needs help with their homework, and so this single parent's got to look something up, but they have the contrast or not the contrast but the brightness on their phone or their iPad, they have it turned to the very very minimum because they're in a dark room, they're trying to have any extra light come in, but you've got dark text on a dark background, and now this person, they can't read that. And so so there's all kinds. So I would say the first thing is spend some time just be willing to open your mindset and go, we're going to do this as a brand because we want to be a good neighbor to our community. And what do I need to learn? And then the next thing is, like I said, start with a website accessibility statement. I've got a template for one. I'm more than happy to provide people. It's just a simple way to say, if you're having trouble accessing our content, here's how you can contact us. Now, the issue is if your website can't be controlled with a keyboard, all right, you want to make sure that when that page opens, that there's no navigation at the top. I tell people, if nothing else, have it open as a Google document because Google is accessible. So just have it open as a Google document at first if you have to. But what it does is it says, here's the efforts we're working on. We've got a plan in place. If you have any challenges whatsoever, we want to help So, fill out this form or call us at this number, email us at this email, whatever you can do. So that's why I like to really start with website accessibility, or a website accessibility statement on a website, and then open your mindset and just start looking at your stuff and go, how would somebody do this if they were blind or deaf or had dyslexia, or had slow internet, or had a whatever it is. So that would be my starting point.
That's great. And is there some sort of self-assessment that people can access to kind of like, okay, I'm ready. What does this look like? How can we? I love that you framed that. I love that the first thing is the mindset thing. Like, how can we be a better neighbor? That just it's a much better framing of this, because I only work with good people who want to do good things in the world, and being a good neighbor is part of that. So we say, yep, we're here. We realize that we haven't been super friendly from a digital, access perspective. Is there a way to take an assessment and figure out kind of where we stand on things?
Yes. Now, there's none that we know of that helps you look at your email, your PDFs, your social media content, and your web. So we've created one to help with your website. It can take 4 to 10 minutes, is what what our analytics show us, depending upon how technical you are. Almost every single question in the quiz, there's not that many, there's like 14 or 15, but every single question has a little 2 3 minute video that shows you what that's talking about if you don't know what it's talking about. So if there's a couple things you don't know and you have to watch the videos, it's going to take you a little bit longer, but if you're, some of the things, you're just going to be able to answer them real simple. The last few questions do ask you a couple things that you may go, wait, why does this matter? Because it's going to ask you, do you do more than $10 million a year in revenue, or do more than $2,000 a month in ads? And you may be going, why is this relevant to this? Because predatory lawyers, they, and this in the marketing space, we can buy these lists. I can buy a list of, companies with, 25 to 50 employees. I can buy a list of companies with over $10 million in revenue, $100 million in revenue, whatever it might be. So these lists exist. Lawyers, there are some law firms, they buy these lists, and then they have paralegals just start going down the list, and they go to the website and they look and they're like, oh, no website accessibility statement. Oh, I can't access it with tab. And so they fire a letter off to that business. And we have clients this has happened to. They're clients now. They weren't. It hasn't happened to any of our people that were our clients. We have had people that have become our clients that has happened to. People get letters then in the mail and say, hey, you're out of compliance. You've got 30 days to fix this, or we're suing you for $10,000. And some go right to lawsuits. They've got people that have disabilities that they represent, but they go out and find websites and then say, oh, our client who has this disability couldn't access this if they wanted to. They don't even have to try. It's just they didn't want to. And so some of those questions on the assessment are to help the assessment gauge your risk. And so at the end, you're going to get a risk score of low, medium, or high. If you have a high risk, maybe it's because your website doesn't have a few key things, and you make over $10 million a year, and you provide a public service. Like, you've got a big target on you. So that's, we kind of weigh it that way. But if you're a smaller business, maybe you don't have the accessibility on your site, there's a lower risk of somebody coming after you, but that doesn't eliminate the responsibility to do anything. It just kind of helps us gauge how fast do we need to be working here, really. And so that's why those questions are on there. So if you want to use that, you can go to accessscorecard.com. So Access Scorecard, 3 S's there in the middle, Access scorecard.com. You can take the assessment. You'll get the results at the end. If you don't have a website accessibility statement, you're going to need an automated email from me with a link to a templated document that you can open in Google and just it just says, insert company name here. You're going to open that Google Doc, make a copy of it, edit it, and send it to your web person and say, I want this on a page on my website and a link in the footer, and boom, you've got a website accessibility statement on your website. So we'll just send you that if you mark that you don't have that on your website. And if you're like, I don't even want to do this. Maybe you're like, I don't have 10 minutes, something like that. We're just happy. We're happy to do it for you because I can do the assessment on your website in about 2-3 minutes. I just can't answer the questions about like your revenue and stuff like that. But I can do a technical, what we call lightning audit. We can do a lightning audit in about 2 minutes. So.
I want to open the floor just really quickly for any specific questions, if those have come up, and then that way we can live answer.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I do have a question. When it comes to social media, since so much of it is graphics or photos, beyond just putting a text descriptor, is there something else that should be done for accessibility for social media content?
So great a question. So all social media platforms now, when you upload an image, you can add an alt text. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, if you put up a picture, there's a place to add an alt text. The first couple times you do it, it's going to be a little, but then it's going to become like now it just comes so fast, and you just quickly want to describe what's in the image. Specifically what's the story it's telling that matches up with the content of what you're doing. So just describe the image. If you have video, you want to make sure that if you're doing any type of auto captioning, that it's not bubbly, that it's not you kind of want to use boring captioning because screen readers can read the boring stuff.
Okay.
They can't read the fancy, bubbly, and not only that, people like some places like 12% of men in the United States are red-green colorblind.
Mhm.
And so it's that's a lot. That's a lot of guys that are red-green colorblind. And so if you have if your captions are using colors and then the video behind it has got that color, things are blending together, it's not going to be able to read them.
Okay.
And so if they're sitting there in bed scrolling, or if they're at a work office, in a meeting and they're scrolling through their social media, they're not going to have the volume on, and they're not going to be able to read that. So those are a couple quick things to do. And then just when you design something, you want to make sure there's enough contrast ratio between the text and the background. Text over a picture is always challenging. It's just always challenging. So you have to make sure the photo is either grayed way down, contrasted way out, or have a shadow behind the text, have a solid box of color behind the text, and then you want to have just a nice bit of contrast between the text and what's behind it.
Right.
And that's your social. That's it. That's good. And then if yeah, that's it. It's pretty simple.
Okay. Thank you.
The other thing that I would add, just to call it out specifically, is that I recommend with clients is that they don't ever include anything anything that's only in the graphic from a text perspective that's not in the caption. So it feels to you redundant to have it in the graphic and in the caption. But if we're saying it's, it's a scripty font or, whatever, then that information can be completely lost. And so it's one other
Yeah,
piece.
great point. Great point. Yep. So, and if you have that text, You can either put in the or add it as the in part of the alt text
Yeah.
as well. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a great question, Tana. Thank you for asking that. And that definitely brings us to a good place, I think, to kind of pause and one, shift our mindset about this, and then two, take this assessment and look at how adding an accessibility statement on the website. I'm like, that's like the first thing that I'm going to run and do. I think I have one, but the fact that I don't know for sure makes me a little nervous. So those are definitely my takeaways from today. In addition to the fact that this doesn't have to be overwhelming. It is something that we can do one thing at a time and take steps. But we certainly can't just keep like putting it in the corner and avoiding eye contact with it because it is something that we want to do to be a good neighbor and to be legally compliant. Anybody watching this, listening after the fact or today, please share this. This is, like I said, this is coming up a lot in my space, not just the marketing and website spaces, but it's just coming up a lot lately. And so please feel free to, I'll send a recording. You can share this link with anybody that you know that does anything in the digital space. And Eric is here as a resource. He has a full service marketing agency and I mentioned throughout the call the things that they can do to support and do that capacity. So thank you for joining us today and taking the first step just by showing up and being curious about this to build a more inclusive web for all.
Yeah.
You.
Well,
Nice meeting everybody. Hi, Kathy.
all righty. Well, y'all have Kathy, I didn't see you hiding over there. Did you have any questions? Okay, I think did you shake your head no? I think so.
Oh yeah, she's
No.
muted.
No, I didn't. I just been making notes and
Well,
Awesome.
thanks for being here. What kind of
make it a
business?
higher priority for me to go and look at my website. It's been needing tweaking, as Danielle knows anyways. And so, okay.